podcast land, and welcome back to Land of Lincoln Credit Union's Season 2 of our podcast. We are so excited to be back broadcasting with you guys, and we hope to bring you all the education and tools and resources that we can to help you through some of these difficult financial times, the crazy stuff that we're facing. My name is Kayla Hittmeyer. I am the Chief Marketing Officer for Land of Lincoln Credit Union, and I got my sidekick here with me. I didn't learn how to talk. Go ahead and introduce yourself, my dear.
Hi, I am Katie Saloga. I'm the marketing coordinator here at Land of Lincoln.
My sidekick, my right hand, chickadee. So we kind of thought, obviously, something that is in the news a lot and that we're all facing, and it's a pain in the rump. And we know we get regular questions from members about this, asking us to look into our crystal ball about that pesky little thing everyone's talking about called inflation. So we thought we'd maybe tackle a little bit. We did some research. Obviously, we're in it every single day, and we see how it's impacting people. We know how it's impacting our own pocketbook.
Definitely.
Yeah. But we did a little bit more research and talked to some experts, and we just wanted to see if we could answer some questions for everybody on the impacts of it, what it is, when are we going to be done, when are things going to get back to normal?
Will it ever be normal?
Will it ever be normal? So while we don't have a crystal ball, we do have some options that we're going to go over with you for just kind of combating it and trying to minimize the effects of what we're in the middle of. So let's just jump right in. And I'm going to kind of say, maybe Katie, you serve as the role of our member or our listening audience and throw some questions at me, and I'll see if I can answer them for you based off my research.
Well, expert Kayla. What is inflation?
So just basic, what is inflation? This is a great question because honestly, a lot of times people will be like, oh, it's inflation. But really, what does that mean? We all can equate it to higher prices on things, which is basically the gist of it. But it's really kind of a measure, if you think about it, of the demand and supply equaling prices. So what happens during times of inflation is the demand gets higher and higher and higher, supply is lower, which equals higher prices for goods and services. So that's the most basic. It's a measurement of those rising prices based on the supply and demand and the state of the economy. Raw materials, wages, things like that. The prices of all those things can affect the price. I'm sure all of us have gone somewhere and been like, well, I can't seem to hire enough people, so I'm short, and everybody's charging me more when I get the materials I need delivered, so I have to pass that on to the consumer somehow. So we are hearing that everywhere we go, and that's kind of what causes that to happen, and that's why you see it. And I mean, some will take advantage of this period of time.
Oh, for sure.
They're really not experiencing a rise in their costs or their operational costs, but since everyone's raising prices, it's time for them to take advantage. Yes, so you will have some of that that you kind of need to look out for, and it makes sense for consumers to be vigilant and still continue to compare prices.
Yeah.
Because there will be people who don't take advantage of that, or bigger companies who have that economies of scale and aren't feeling the pressure to raise their prices as much. So that's something to think about there. Did I answer that sufficiently for you?
I believe so. Let's see. So why are we experiencing this now?
I bet you could guess.
COVID.
What? Yes, COVID. COVID's the cause of everything.
It's still the cause for everything.
Yes. I mean, even though we are, seeing less, thank goodness, less and less of people being severely ill or passing away from it, and things getting shut down and everything, we are still experiencing the ripple effects of that pandemic period of time when things were shut down. And so basically, economists are saying there's three main causes right now for this state of inflation that we're in. The household demand, when everybody was pent up shopping online, it went so high. And then you couple that with all of these places that didn't have people producing the materials. They'd shut down, they weren't working. So you've got high demand, low supply, high prices. And plus there were just plain shortages. You had all these things. The other thing that's playing into this, believe it or not, you hear people say the war in Ukraine, the Russians invading Ukraine has caused it. Well, that's the case when it comes to like our energy costs, the fuel, because what happens is they apply these sanctions to Russia to hurt their exporting trade, or to, and make sure that they can't do business, international business. And so that makes the supply less to us from Russia, and the prices go up on energy costs, things there. And then the third thing that the people are saying is this presence of a strong labor market can cause that, cause us to be in this state of inflation. I mean, gas prices, 60% year over year is where they've been. Food prices, take a guess on what you think. Like when you think about your grocery bill, how much do you think year over year they've increased?
Ooh, I don't know, 40%.
Not that bad, believe it or not. The economists are saying year over year increase in food prices was 10.4%.
Oh gosh, I really overshot though.
Yeah, well, I mean, when you think about though, a 10% increase on your typical grocery bill, that's significant.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't see those kinds of hikes year over year. You just don't. So it's really impacting. And we've got such a large population of people who live paycheck to paycheck, unfortunately, that it hurts them when their budget goes up just that much. That's one of the other things that I read about with the inflation too, is during that pandemic shutdown, you had a ton of demand. People were flush with cash because you had stimulus checks. They weren't needing loans. So that can impact where rates go on these different things too, because rates will go up for making up some of that margin. So it's kind of just a crazy thing when you're thinking about what the pandemic continues to do for us. But hopefully things will start to level out. So we'll see.
We will. So into our next question, how long will it last?
So that's the key here. People are... From what I've read with economists and strategists that do this every single day, the simple answer there is they say, we're really bad at predicting. I think so many things play into what can slow it down and what doesn't. I mean, obviously the supply and demand that we've talked about can play into that, but there's just, the situation in Ukraine and how that's going to go. I mean, gas prices, we've seen those fluctuate. It's like a tidal wave, and it can depend a lot on foreign affairs and things like that. So while other things may start to come down, that doesn't necessarily do the same thing because of different other types of things that can happen there. But from looking historically, the longest period of inflation was in the 70s and 80s. You were born, right?
I was around. I was not even a thought.
Yeah. So that period of inflation, brace yourself, since you weren't here, it was a decade long. I mean, it was a doozy. It lasted a good long time. The worst part about it, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. We'll get there. But there was a shorter period of inflation that occurred in 2008.
I was around for that one.
Yes. Do you remember it? Do you remember gas prices skyrocketing over $5?
I do.
Yeah.
But I feel like that was...
Well, how old would you have been?
When did I learn how to drive? So yeah, that was when I was learning to drive.
Yeah. I mean, they were crazy.
I was trying to drive... I remember my dad saying, don't brake too much too hard. Try to ease up to stop, save your gas getting there.
Turn the air off, all those
things.
That's
how serious we were about it.
Yeah, I mean, I can remember there being lines at some gas stations because they would finish out a tank at a low price and then they were going to hike it, and just lines all over the place. But so that was the last, I guess it was the last time we experienced inflation, and it was short. I mean, that literally was just like July to August when that happened. So, but like I said, the root cause of the inflation is what kind of is how strategists try to dictate when it might end. The reopening of our economy after the pandemic, before the supply of goods and services had increased, has really been what's impacted this. We're already starting to see some of that shift back.
Right.
I mean, you can kind of remember when they first opened it, if you ordered something even online, it was shipping to you late, it was high cost, it was out. It was like for the first time ever when I was looking at Amazon and it would say out of stock. You're like, what? So, we're already starting to see that shift back, which helps. Even stores who are out of stock on things, you could go and not have your favorite toilet. There's some things that are not back yet.
Yes.
Have you noticed that?
My biggest thing, I don't know if this has to do with COVID or not, but I blame COVID, is Culver's Buffalo chicken tenders.
Yeah.
They are gone forever.
They're gone? Mm-hmm. I thought you were going to say they were different.
No, they're gone. They used to just be taped off not too long. I don't know, maybe it was 2021.
Right.
And now they're officially off the menu. And I blame COVID.
I do too. Well, I definitely blame COVID back for taking away the Mexican pizza.
Yeah.
At Taco Bell. Now that's resurfaced, thank goodness. But it's limited supply. You can only get one.
And these are the things we worry about.
I mean, these are our problems. But little things like that you start to see. My husband's coffee creamer. It's been gone since pandemic.
It's just
certain things
and may not ever resurface.
And it's just so weird to me. But anyway, you're starting to see, those things are starting to kind of work their way back. The supply chain bottlenecks that we were witnessing, they're not quite as bad anymore. But those things really have to level out before we can see this kind of come back to a normal state of prices. But some economists are predicting that it's not going, there's some things that are not going to go back to pre-pandemic pricing.
Oh, I'm sure there's plenty of things. It's probably the most things that we need the most.
Oh, of course. But yeah, I just think there's some things that we've seen the end of that lower price. So it's unfortunate. But my answer to that question, per our experts that we have researched, is it's really hard to tell.
Yeah.
Some are saying that we could see this period of inflation end by the middle of next year, summer of 2023. As a matter of fact, a resounding large number of economists are predicting that we could see that.
Well, hopefully so.
However, there are those economists who feel like this is the precursor to a recession.
Yeah.
We're getting into a recession. So it's really, no one knows.
Yeah. We'll just send good vibes. That's all we can do, right?
Yeah.
So, once we do hit that period where we are out of this inflation zone, what happens next? What happens after?
Right. So, the hope is that everything kind of goes back to some form of normalcy. Job creation continues and people get back out there, and household finances can strengthen themselves back up, and consumers are spending and the supply is there. And the hope is that everything starts to level out. Yes, prices will probably still be up a little bit, but not where they are now. And in some areas, we are seeing them start to come down. Gas has come down a little bit, so we're seeing that momentum of it starting to come back down a little bit, but there are some that argue that we could still see a recession take place. In the 70s and 80s, that inflation period that I mentioned earlier ended in a recession. That's when we saw that brief stock market crash in 1987. You probably heard about it while you were in school. So that's, we hope that's not going to be the case in this one, but there are some economists who are predicting that, we're headed that way. And then there are some who say, no, we're going to take the right steps and things are going to turn back around. So really, honestly, nobody knows. The only thing I would say is that you just need to find ways you can yourself to curb the effects of the rising costs of inflation. Yeah. Until we know more.
So, being the financial experts we are, how do we do that?
So, one thing I would say is, we always talk about making sure that you have a budget and you stick to it. Mm-hmm. That's especially important, obviously, in a time of rising costs. Most people right now are, gone are the days of eating out a couple times a week or this or that. But even there, it's not necessarily cheaper to buy groceries and eat at home.
No.
So there's all you can really do is really start to compare costs. One statistic that I read said that Americans throw out $1,600 worth of groceries every year. Wow. And when you think about fruit that goes bad, produce that goes bad. So one first immediate thing you can do is just make sure you search for new recipes. So if you've got that stuff sitting there, use it, cook it, put it in something, make something new, make a game out of it, make something fun of a family night out of it. But make sure you're using what you've got and not having the waste. I mean, you remember grandparents talking about, the stock market crash, and they lived through the recession, in the 20s. So they learned how to use everything and not waste anything. I mean, that's basically where this came from, and we're kind of working our way back around it. It's cyclical. Yeah. So the key for you at home is to just make sure that you're looking and using all of your groceries. Budget how much you're going to spend out each month on different things. Budget what you're spending at the grocery store. Don't go to the grocery store hungry.
Yeah. That would be my thing, is try not to overstock your fridges and cabinets, because that's where your things get thrown away. Just make your lists of what you need.
Stick to it and go more frequently.
And check your fridge before you go.
Exactly. Yep. Take that inventory. Along those same lines, take inventory of things you're spending. It's, our listeners on a podcast, you're pretty technically savvy out there. We know that because you're listening to a podcast right now.
You found us.
Yes.
You're here.
Which probably means you have subscriptions to things that you're streaming, your just apps in general that you use. So I would suggest that when you sit down and you look at that monthly budget, you also look at all the things you're subscribed to.
Yeah.
Whether it's the streaming services, or I looked the other day and, we share an Apple ID at home, a family Apple ID, and my kids had subscribed to a couple things with trial and it didn't end.
Yep.
And now we've got this subscription to like a big game, It's like, oh my goodness. So those little things can add up. So sit down and look through all those types of subscriptions. It's not unheard of during an inflation at this time that people look at their phone, their cable, their internet, their satellite service, things like that, and go back, call them and say, am I on the right plan? Could I shift this a little bit and save $10 a month? That can go a really long way when gas prices and your, power bill is as high as a matter of fact. Speaking of power, you can call your power company and negotiate on your billing.
Yep.
Your billing cycle, or how there's different things that you can do there. Don't think that it's the end all.
It doesn't always have to be a once a month payment. You can set up a payment plan with them if you ask, or they might suggest it to you.
Yeah. And there's options too for those types of providers. You don't always know that, but you actually do have some various options. Same goes with your home insurance and your car insurance. If you haven't shopped it in a while, shop it. I encourage you to go out there and shop home and auto insurance, because we just did, and it saved us a tremendous amount of money. So just, always be looking. Sometimes you get into those relationships and it's just, you kind of just keep going, and it auto renews and it rolls over and you just keep going. But it's a good time to just take an inventory of that. Gym memberships, are you really using it all the time? Is this something you could suspend for a while and do your workouts or exercise at home? Just little things like that here and there. Transportation. Gas costs a lot of money. There are a lot of different places where you can get rewards, fuel points, like Kroger has that. There's credit cards that specifically have fuel reward points.
There's things like the Gas Buddy app, and it shows you the prices around town, so you can maybe drive an extra mile, but you'll get 10 cents off in comparison.
Yes. Travel, make sure if you're someone who has to travel a lot that you're enrolled in all the rewards programs and the miles that roll over, whether it's flying or if it's just driving, carpool when you can to different places. The other thing I would say is with debt, if you've got credit card debt, right now is a good time to look into consolidating credit cards. You don't want to have to continue pouring money into really interest payments and not much on your principal. So you want to take the credit card debt that you have and look, we have a great balance transfer rate right now. A lot of places do. So look around, see what you can do to consolidate that credit card debt and get to paying down that while you have a low interest. Sometimes there's 0% interest for a certain period of time. So shop it a little bit. There's a lot of offers out there. So as far as debt goes. So the other thing to think about is if you have, bills, medical bills and medical debt that's piled up. I saw a really sad statistic the other day, as a matter of fact, about the number of cancer patients who file bankruptcy.
Yeah.
It amazes me, and how quickly that can cause such financial peril for someone. And please note, side note, we are here to help. We have ways to help you. Yeah. Please reach out to us if you find yourself in that situation. But if you do have a ton of medical debt, it's really hard during inflation just to buy the standard things that you need when you know you've got these looming bills to pay. I encourage you to call the healthcare provider or the collections agency that's handling it for them. Sometimes it goes to that, because a lot of them will offer you 24 months interest free. They'll set you up a payment plan. So just make sure you're not avoiding your creditors, and you're working with them. Speaking as someone who is a creditor here at our facility, we're much more likely to work with someone if we're hearing from them.
Well, yeah, if you dodge us, that just annoys us. It makes things harder. Yeah. Talk to people that...
Explain it. We're all human. We know what we go through. We know what we're all experiencing right now. And they're going to work with you. I mean, that's the point, is people helping people for credit unions. And a lot of places, healthcare, that's their mission too, is to help you through it. So they're going to find ways. So just don't avoid it. Just make the call and set up a plan. I do want to talk a little bit, because we may have some listeners who are a few years off or starting to think about retirement, and they're looking at how things are going in the economy and their 401k tanking and issues of that nature. Try not to look daily. Honestly, that's my best advice to you, because if you look back historically, these things are cyclical. If you're not literally 2 weeks away from retirement, just try to ride the wave a little bit. Don't look. Right now is a really good time also to think about alternate investments. I mean, CD rates are at an all-time high, and I know they are for us. Yeah. And they are really everywhere. But we're paying more on CDs, certificates of deposit now, than we have in a very long time. Yes. So those are short-term type things that you can shift money and earn a little bit more than you normally would. Savings bonds, savings accounts are paying higher interest. So while you're paying higher interest on loans, yes, which stinks. Yeah. It's no fun. Especially if there's people out there, and I've talked to them who are like, oh, I just missed refinancing the mortgage, last year when rates were really low. But there's ways you can kind of make up for that money by investing in a short-term CD that's paying a higher interest rate. So look into those things. And the last thing I would say is that look for alternate ways to increase your income. I mean, you'd be surprised how many things sitting around your house you can resell on eBay, Facebook Marketplace, make a little bit of money there. Another thing that I saw that I find interesting, and I actually took advantage of it at one point, is there is an increase in people renting out things that they own, like their RV. There's a whole website that you can rent RVs off of, like for a weekend. Yeah. Boats, swimming pools, like people's backyard swimming pools. You want to have a party? There are people renting them out.
Interesting.
Isn't that crazy? I think that the pandemic kind of changed all that. People were looking for different ways to celebrate and different things to do. So that's another way that they can make money. If you have a property somewhere, get on VRBO or Airbnb and rent it out, lease it out, So there are a lot of options available to earn that extra income with minimal labor that can really kind of help supplement your income during this time of inflation. So the last thing I would say is just make sure you're communicating with people. We literally here at our financial institution have over 30 certified financial counselors who are equipped with the tools and resources to help you figure out how to save, how to budget, how to get through this tough time. Where can you curb costs? Where can you save? And I see it. Katie and I, we see it every day. Saving people money. So call us, live chat with us. We've got that on our website. Go visit our YouTube channel. Look at the past season of our podcast. Yeah. We have all kinds of topics on there, ways you can save and things like that.
Some things I have taken from that last season.
No kidding. Yes. So anyway, this wasn't really a fun topic, but hopefully you were able to take away some pointers and things. And obviously keep an eye on our website. We'll keep you up to date on things as they're changing, and make sure that you tune in. We're starting our season 2 of Bank on Learning More, and we will have a fresh new podcast for you every week. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Katie, for
thank you for knowing all the things I didn't know just now.
Okay, so to our podcast listeners, thanks again for joining us, and we will talk to you next week. In the meantime, bank on learning more.